It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 28, looking at the groups and teams of the 2024 Copa America. This episode is looking at the players of Canada. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is Series 28 on the players of the 2024 Copa America. This episode covers Canada's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. That's what we're doing here, and we'll examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and a couple of other factors to categorize them into categories: definite, likely, possible but unlikely, seemingly off the squad, and retired or off the squad for a long time. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode is divided into three parts. In section one, we look at some general information on the team. Section two, we cover the main candidates in each position. And section three, we summarize and have some concluding business. Let's begin then. Section one, some information on the team. So we comment on any major retirements, and we only have one for Canada. That is Atiba Hutchinson. He was anxious to make it to the World Cup, and he did so at the age of 40, and promptly retired basically after that was done. So he finished with 105 caps and 9 goals in a career that spanned 2003 to 2023. He was part of most Gold Cups in that time. Actually, in a period from 2013 to 17, he was not part of Gold Cup squads, but played in a lot of Gold Cups. But of course, the World Cup in 2022 was his crown and glory. He was the captain of the team. So just reaching it was good for Canada. They didn't actually do that well once they were there, and he's now retired from soccer altogether. Yes, actually, he did play a couple of games after the World Cup, but is as I say, retired now. Okay, let's look at club affiliations for Canada. In the past, this was kind of a disappointing story. We just had players mostly locally, and if they were in Europe, they were for pretty obscure teams. All that has changed now. We have some players for very good teams, of course, Alphonso Davies with Bayern Munich, but we also have Steven Eustáquio with Porto, and recently Tejan Buchanan joined Inter Milan. So these are the kind of clubs we never dreamed of being with. And then some kind of secondary but still recognizable clubs: Malmo, Jonathan David with Lille, that's a pretty good club. Celtic, defender or right back Alistair Johnson with Celtic. And still about half of the players playing in locally. So either with one of the three Canadian teams, Toronto FC, Vancouver Whitecaps, or CF Montreal, or a number of them playing for US teams like Portland Timbers and New England Revolution, one even playing for Puebla in Mexico. So yes, definitely the club affiliations of Canada is in a good period, and that is why part of the reason why they're doing so well. Let's look at recent games. So we're basically looking from the start of 2023 or after the World Cup in 2022, and Canada played 12 games since that time, and 4 of them were 2023 Gold Cup in the summer. And I'll say here that really the A team having played the World Cup in 2022 in December, a lot of them didn't come. So it was basically a B team. However, there were 3 or 4 kind of the A team players who did play. So the other cup is the 2022 World Cup. So those are the kind of the tournaments we'll mention in terms of whether players are on the squad. But keep in mind that 2023 Gold Cup squad was a B team. Let's look at their formations over the period. They've really been actually all over the place in their formations. 3 different formations in the Cup, in the World Cup, and then, almost exaggeratedly going out of their way to be a bit too clever, it almost seems. But it does kind of boil down to a 3-5-2 about half of the time. So that's a bit of an unusual formation, but 3 at the back, 5 across the middle, and 2 up front. And they also had a 3-4-1-2 formation, which is basically the same thing. So we could put that above 50%. Otherwise, it's different formations throughout the period. And the manager did change towards the end. And basically, they didn't go with a 3-5-2 under the caretaker manager. We'll have to see what the new manager has in store. But hopefully, or my feeling is a more stable formation, one that they go with more, is probably better for the team, a better sign. Okay. The last order of business in section 1 is just looking at their friendlies. So, they have a couple of tough ones coming up. These are the first 2 games under the new manager, who will meet right away. But it is Netherlands on June 6th, and then France on June 9th. I believe both of those are in the countries in the European countries. So, really putting themselves to the test right away. France and Netherlands, of course, preparing for Euro Cup themselves. Okay, let's move on to section 2, and we will begin looking at the candidates, beginning with the manager. So a bit of a narrative here. We have basically John Herdman on the way out. John Herdman really brought the team together and led them through the 2019 and 2021 and 2023 Gold Cups. But of course, his claim to fame would be the leading them to reach the 2022 World Cup. However, he was replaced first by a caretaker manager, who we'll just mention in the summary of the situation, but then by Jesse Marsh, an American manager for Canada, and so we will tell you a little bit about him since he's new to the squad. So Canada since 2024, of course. Leeds United in England from 2022 to 23, and then Leipzig in Germany in 2021, a short term there. Red Bull Salzburg, he was an assistant at Leipzig actually prior to Red Bull. And the New York Red Bulls from 2015 to 19. Princeton Tigers University team prior to that. And then some Canadian experience coaching Montreal Impact in Canada from 2011 to 12. Also some national team experience in that he was an assistant for the USA national team in 2010 and 2011. So pretty good credentials there for Canada. Part of the reason Bertman got in trouble was because he said Canada's soccer team was underfunded, and that turned out to be the case. In fact, I think the 3 big clubs are helping to pay Jesse Marsh or contributed to that in order to get a good quality manager. So we have Jesse Marsh on board, and he will take us through the Copa America 2024 and then the World Cup in 2026, hopefully. Okay, let's do a summary of the situation, kind of a narrative. So John Herdman led them through the World Cup. Especially in the qualification for that, he developed a great spirit on the team. However, that seemed to develop cracks after the less than successful World Cup and a loss to the USA in the CONCACAF Nations League semi-final, which prompted him, as I said, to speak out against the funding for the team. I was a bit surprised, actually, when he was released. I and my nephew, who sometimes joined me on the podcast, we were all really surprised, but we didn't really realize that things had deteriorated a bit with the team. When we listened to a podcast, basically by the media that really follows the team, they weren't that surprised or that disappointed by it. So their lack of disappointment or lack of surprise was a surprise to us. But apparently things had deteriorated to a degree. Herdman is now coaching Toronto FC. We still have a lot of respect for him, but we're hoping for the best for Jesse Marsh here. So Herdman's departure was announced in late August 2023, and the Canadian assistant manager, Canadian as in he is both a Canadian citizen and also assistant manager of the Canadian team, Mauro Biello, became the caretaker manager in September, and he took care of the team until May, so led them through some games in the fall and in March of 2024, and in May of 2024, Marsh was unveiled as the new manager. So that is the situation. Let's move on to the goalkeepers, and we'll begin just by kind of listing the candidates and then going back and talking about the more likely ones. So we have a definite candidate in Dane St. Clair and a likely candidate in Milan Borjan and a likely candidate also in Maxime Crepeau, a possible candidate in Jonathan Sirios, and two players, sorry, Tom McGill, who is possible but unlikely. I'll dispense with him here. He was on the bench for 8 of the 12 matches over the last period, but not selected for the last 4 matches. He was a backup keeper in the 2023 Gold Cup. So there is a chance for Tom McGill, but keeping in mind that that 2023 Gold Cup team was a B team, it doesn't really raise his chances that much. We have James Pantemis, who seems to be off the squad. He was a backup keeper in the 2022 World Cup, but hasn't appeared there since. And we have Jason Lutweiler, off the team for longer, since February 2022, and had been a backup keeper for several tournaments up until the 2021 Gold Cup. But doesn't look like a candidate here, Jason Lutweiler. And let's go back and look at the main candidate. So actually, Dane St. Clair looks like he is kind of second in line as the keeper here, but he seems more definite in terms of selection than Borjan, so we'll deal with him first. St. Clair is 27 years old and he's been with Canada since 2021. Only 4 caps to his name, and he plays for Minnesota United in the USA since 2019. So he was a backup keeper for the last 3 tournaments, the 2021 Gold Cup and the 2022 World Cup. And sorry, did I say the last 3? Because no, he was the starting keeper in the 2023 Gold Cup. Actually, no, he wasn't. He replaced Milan Borjan, who was there for game 1, but went home after game 2. And I think that was a bit of a disagreement with the manager, which maybe was part of the cracks in the team that we talked about. He said it was for an injury, but I believe he played for his club, um, uh, Slovan Bratislava, immediately after returning. So there were suspicions as to whether it was really an injury or some kind of an argument. Nevertheless, Dane St. Clair led through most of the Gold Cup there and is making a bid as a starting keeper. He started 2 of their games over the past period since the start of 2023 and was on the bench for 10 others. Okay, let's move on to Milan Borja. And he is 36 years old and has been with the national team Canada since 2011 with 81 caps. And he currently is on the roster of Red Star Belgrade in Serbia since 2017, but actually has been on loan to Slovan Bratislava in Slovakia since 2023. And we will just cover his recent tournaments. Actually, he didn't participate in the 2021 Gold Cup. He took time off to recover. He was the starter in the 2022 World Cup. And in the Gold Cup in 2023, as we said, started and finished games 1 and 2 and went home with an injury after that, which we suspect was not really an injury. Anyway, over this period, he has started 9 of their 12 games, injured for 2 games and not selected for the last match. So that kind of bumped him down to the likely level, as did the fact that he's getting older, 36 years old. So we know that Dane St. Clair is preparing to become the main keeper. It looked for a while like it would be our other likely keeper, Maxime Crepeau, who is now 30 years old and has been with the team since 2016 and has 16 caps, playing for Portland Timber in the USA. But it seems like Dane St. Clair has kind of moved into the secondary position. Crepeau was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup, but wasn't selected for the World Cup in 2022 due to injury, and he was also injured for the 2023 Gold Cup. So it is possible he can come back into the backup position here, and he has. He returned after an 11-month injury in October of 2023 and did start 1 of their remaining 4 games and was on the bench for the 3 others. So perhaps I'm premature in putting Dane St. Clair ahead of him. Anyway, it does look like those 3 will be the keepers going into the tournament. Jonathan Sirios is brand new to the team. He's 23 years old. And he got his first and only appearance on the bench in March 2024. So perhaps if one of the other goalies gets injured, he could step into place, but he's pretty untested. All right, let's go on to defenders and central defenders. And we have as a definite candidate, Kamal Miller. And we have Stephen Vittoria as a likely candidate. And several possible candidates, Derek Cornelius, Zach McGraw, Moise Bombito, and Luc Defougerol, and possible but unlikely is Scott Kennedy. Scott Kennedy was actually not selected for the World Cup due to injury, just like the 2021 Gold Cup, but he was in the 2023 Gold Cup as a sub. He hasn't appeared for the last 4 matches, though, so we have him as possible but unlikely. Similarly, we have Joel Waterman who was selected for the World Cup in 2020, but not for the Gold Cup in 2023. He was on the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. And oh, it looks like he has played recently. Like he started the last game in 2024, Joe Waterman. So I should probably have him as a possible candidate here. I'll move him up the list. So Joe Waterman will give a brief introduction to shortly. So Scott Kennedy, possible but unlikely. And then we have a couple of names who have drifted off the squad. So Donnell Henry last appeared in November of 2022. Kyle Hibert, just one cap for him. Not a consideration at this point. March 2023 was his last appearance. And Lucas McNaughton, November 2022, also only just one cap for the team. So never really made it in. Let's look at the candidates. We have Kamal Miller, who is 27 years old and has been with Canada since 2019 with 42 caps and no goals. He recently moved to the Portland Timbers in the USA in 2024 and was with Inter Miami before that, and CF Montreal is where I kind of envisioned him, to be honest, but he's not there anymore. Kamal Miller has been part of all the tournaments, usually as a starter over the period, and despite being a starter in the 2022 World Cup and thus part of the A team, he and Stephen Victoria, who will meet below, both did play in the 2023 Gold Cup. So Kamal Miller started 10 of their 12 games over the since the start of 2023, and he subbed in for the first two matches there. So very consistent appearances. Next, we have Stephen Victoria. He's 37 years old, so quite old. He was actually quite old when he joined Canada in 2016, but has amassed 46 caps and 5 goals. He currently plays for Chaves in Portugal, but has played for bigger teams in Portugal, Benfica from 2013 to 16, and Porto from 2006 to 10. So quite experienced there. Has been part of every major tournament except the 2019 Gold Cup, and has started 6 of their 12 games over this period, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, and not selected for 2 others. So again, he was a starter in the World Cup, but was one of the A-team players who played in the 2023 Gold Cup there. Next, we have Derek Cornelius, just a possible candidate, and he is playing for Malmo in Sweden since 2023. He has 19 caps for the national team and was selected for the World Cup, but didn't join in the 2023 Gold Cup. So Derek Cornelius has 4 starts over their 12 games since the 2022 World Cup, or since the beginning of 2023, and he was on the bench for 2, but not selected for the for 6 matches. But they were the first 6 matches, so kind of coming into the team in the second half. Next, Zach McGraw. Has been with Canada since 2023 and just 4 caps. All of them were in the 2023 Gold Cup, the B team there. Zach McGraw was born in the USA and got his first cap in the Gold Cup and started those games, but he wasn't selected for the last 3 matches for Canada. So we think of him as a kind of a Gold Cup 2023 player. Next, we have Moise Bombito. He has 4 caps for the Canadian national team and plays for the Colorado Rapids in the USA. He was part of the Gold Cup 2023 B team there, started all 4 games, and he has not, he got his first appearance then in 2023, and was on the bench for 4 and not selected for 2 matches. I didn't cover all of his matches there, but he has remained with the team after the Gold Cup, unlike Zach McGraw there. So we should actually put him higher on the list, which we'll do. Next, we have Luc de Fougerolles, and he's just 18 years old, just got his first cap for Canada here in 2024. And he was born in England, and it did actually appear on the bench in October of 2023. Didn't start any games, but he got his first appearance as a sub in 2024 and was on the bench for the 3 others. So he's actually with Fulham in England, and he was with their youth club for 10 years before that. So hasn't really integrated into the squad being so young, but hopefully an up-and-comer for Canada now. So we also have Joel Waterman, who we started to introduce. He's 28 years old and has just 3 caps since 2022, and with CF Montreal in Canada since 2020. But he was selected for the World Cup, but was on the bench there, and was not selected for the Gold Cup in 2023 on the preliminary squad, but not selected. So he had actually been off the team for a while. He was off for 15 months, but he returned in March 2024 and started the last of their remaining games. So I definitely shouldn't have put him as unlikely, because when players play the games shortly before the Cup, we have to say they're possible at least. Okay, that is it for central defenders. We're looking at 3 positions there in the central defense because they played a 3-5-2. So let's summarize the situation. Basically, it was Stephen Vittoria and Kamal Miller in the Cup. In the first game, it was a back 3 formation. So the right back, Alistair Johnson, accompanied them. He was the right-sided central defender, of course, with Vittoria in the middle and Miller on the left. After the Cup, Miller remained a staple, starting 10 games, but Vittoria started less. So actually, just 6 of the games he started. And as we said, both of them were on the Gold Cup 2023 squad, despite being 18 players. Other players got starts in what was often a 3-man backline. Kennedy early on, then Bombito and McGraw in the Gold Cup, and Cornelius, Derek Cornelius at the beginning and at the end. And then, as we saw in the World Cup, the right back, Alistair Johnson, popped up on the right, usually when it was a 3-man backline. Okay, that is the central defense. Let's move on to the left back. Actually, Kamal Miller is coded as a left back, but that will have to change. He did play as a left back before, but is much more often a central defender now. And we did move him to talk about him under central defense. So for left backs, we just have a possible candidate in Sam Adekugbe. And we have 2 players who seem to be off the team. One is Luca Petrasso. I think I'm just going to mention the names here and not go into detail. The other is Raheem Edwards. So let's look a bit more closely at Sam Adekugbe, and then we'll summarize the situation, because players, out of position players, are coming in here. Sam Adekugbe has been with Canada since 2015 and has 42 caps and 1 goal. He is 30 years old now, 29 years old, and plays for Vancouver in Canada, Vancouver Whitecaps. He has been abroad, though. He was with Hatayspor in Turkey and actually loaned to Galatasaray in 2023. And he's also played in England, where he was born, actually, Sam Adekugbe. Kind of was on the team for a while, but became most influential in the lead up to the World Cup. So he was selected for the World Cup and was one of the players who didn't join the 2023 Gold Cup after that. So over the period, he has started only 2 of their 12 games. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2, and not selected for 5 others. That is the 4 matches of the Gold Cup and also the last match. So Sam Adekugbe not as influential on the team as most of the 18 squad. Okay, let's talk about the position. Actually, it is the ubiquitous right winger Laria who started the position in the World Cup, and then Adekugbe also played it. When it was a 3-man defence in the Cup and after, the left wing position was not the left back moving up, but it was covered by more attacking players. That is true on the right side too. When it was a 4-man defence with the back line, it remained Laria and Adekugbe playing in that position, except in the Gold Cup, where Ahmed, he's not a defender at all, a midfielder, played out of position when they used a 4-man backline in the Cup. Okay, let's move over to the right back, and here there is a candidate we really associate with the role, and that is Alistair Johnson, who I mentioned sometimes coming back into the 3-man central defence. He's a definite candidate here, and next we go down, all the way down to possible but unlikely, and Dominic Zater. So Dominic Zater has been with the team since 2023 and just 2 caps, and he plays for Korona Kielce in Poland, not one of the teams in Poland that I'm familiar with there, since 2023. It kind of reminds me of the old days for Canada, where a lot of them played for obscure clubs like that. But anyway, he was selected for the 2023 Gold Cup, but was just a sub there. And he has been in and around the team, actually on the bench for 6 games, subbed into 2 games over the last period, but then not selected for the last 4 matches. So Dominic Zator kind of on the outside of the team now, still a chance of getting back in. And then we have 2 players who seem to be off the team. Again, we'll just mention them by name here. So the first is Zachary Brock-Guillard, and the other is Jaquiel Marshall-Rutty. So we'll talk about them more if they are selected for the squad, but it looks like they won't be. Okay, let's go back and look at the candidates in more detail, especially the main candidate, Alistair Johnson. He's 25 years old and been with Canada since 2021 with 40 caps and 1 goal. And he plays for Celtic in Scotland and was with CF Montreal in Canada and Nashville in USA before that. And he was a starter in the Gold Cup. For the 2023 Gold Cup, well, one of the 18 players who didn't participate, but in his case, he was also having ankle surgery, so I think he chose that time to do that, ankle injury and surgery. So over the period, he has started 6 of their 12 games, and he was injured for the 4 Gold Cup matches officially, and subbed in for 1 and suspended for 1. Despite only starting half of the games, though, he is a definite candidate for the squad. He's a staple when he's available. So Alistair Johnson, you can associate with the position of right back. So he was the right back, Alistair Johnson, in the World Cup. And as we saw, when it was a 3-man defence, he became a central defender. However, he didn't move up. Well, obviously then he didn't move up to the right wing when the formation demanded it. It was Richie Laria who moved up the wing. So that remained the case going forward. Johnson kind of a defensive right back, and Laria the more attacking right back or right winger. In the Gold Cup, it was Zach McGraw, the central defender, who mostly replaced Johnson, and they did use a three-man defence in, I think, all but one game there. And Laria also played as a right back in the cup. They used a 4-4-2 twice, and it was Laria who was the right back there. So again, Laria kind of all over the field. We see him in several positions, but we do have him coded as a right winger. Okay, let's move upfield to the defensive midfield. And here we have Stephen Eustachio as a definite candidate and the captain of the team when Borjan, the goalkeeper Borjan, is not. Actually, I just want to confirm that because I think Eustachio may have become captain. Yeah, he is actually listed as the captain now. We have a likely candidate in Samuel Piet, although he's more of a substitute, and then a possible candidate in Liam Fraser, and a player possible but unlikely, Harry Patton. Let's take a look at these players then. Introductions. Stephen Eustachio is 27 years old and has been with Canada since 2019 with 35 caps and 4 goals. And he plays for Porto in Portugal since 2022. He was a starter in the World Cup, but didn't participate in the Gold Cup. It's actually he was named to the final squad, and I wonder if he withdrew, seeing a lot of other 18 players were withdrawing, because he kind of announced his withdrawal a bit later than others. Anyway, Eustachio started 7 of their 12 games over the period. He was injured for 1. That was no, that wouldn't have been the World Cup game, but he was injured for game 3 of the World Cup there. So anyway, injured for 1, didn't participate in the Gold Cup there. Nevertheless, like Alistair Johnson, a definite candidate when he's available. So Stephen Eustachio, very important player for Canada. Samuel Piet, as I said, more of a substitute. He's 29 years old and has been with Canada since 2012 with 69 caps and no goals. He's always around. We just don't really see him as a starter that much. Actually, he was selected for the Gold Cup and injured for the selected for the World Cup, but on the bench there, and injured for the Gold Cup. But again, we are a bit suspect of some of those injuries. In his case, it might have been true because it extended beyond the Gold Cup. He returned in October of 2021. He started 1 of their remaining 4 games, subbed in for 1, and was on the bench for 2 others. So as we usually see him either as a sub or on the bench. So nevertheless, we're quite sure he will be named to the squad. He's a kind of a stalwart player for Canada and a reliable backup player. Next, we have Liam Fraser. He is 25 years old. Just want to check that. 26 years old and has 19 caps for the team since 2019. Liam Fraser plays for FC Dallas in the USA, and he was part of the World Cup 2022 squad, just on the bench for that tournament, and also played the 2023 Gold Cup. Overall, he started 2 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, as well as subbing in for 2. And he wasn't selected for 7 matches, but he was on the bench for the last game. So we think Liam Fraser remains a possible candidate, even if he didn't play that much over the last year. Okay, Harry Patton is possible but unlikely. He was not selected for the World Cup squad. He did come back after in October of 2023, but then he was subbed in for one game and not selected for the last three matches. So Harry Patton. Of course, all of this could change under the new manager who might select different personnel. So all of this is a bit tentative. Before we summarize the position, we'll look at some of the central midfield candidates. And here we have Ismail Kone as a definite candidate, Ahmed Ali as a possible candidate, Mark Anthony Kaye also just a possible candidate here, and possible but unlikely Victor Loturi. So let's take a bit of a closer look at these players. Ismail Kone, just 21 years old, but already has 17 caps and 2 goals for the national team since 2022. Currently plays for Watford in England, moved over from CF Montreal in 2023 to play for them, and was selected for the World Cup squad. He subbed into all 3 games, but didn't participate in the Gold Cup in 2023. Overall, Ismail Kone has started 8 of their 12 games, and the only 4 that he was not part of were those 4 Gold Cup matches. So Ismail Kone, a definite candidate. Ali Ahmed was really just a Gold Cup 2023 player. So he did start all 4 games there. And otherwise, he was on the bench for 2 matches and not selected for 2 others. So hasn't really been called up since. He plays for Vancouver Whitecaps in Canada, and yes, again, just those 4 Gold Cup matches. Next, Mark Anthony Kaye has a bigger and longer role with Canada. He's been with the team since 2017 and has 43 caps and 2 goals. Currently with New England Revolution in the USA, but has been with kind of a Toronto FC product. Mark Anthony Kaye was a substitute in the 2022 World Cup and didn't participate in the Gold Cup there, but he hasn't started any of their games over the last year. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1, but was not selected for 7 matches. He was injured for 1, so seems to be drifting off the team, Mark Anthony Kaye, despite good club affiliations with American teams. He also played for Los Angeles FC for 3 years. Okay, our possible but unlikely candidate is Victor Loturo. He hasn't been selected for the last 4 matches, but he was part of the 2023 Gold Cup squad. So we'll talk about him more if he's selected, but kind of on the outskirts. Okay, now that we've looked at defensive and central midfielders, we can talk about the position. And Atiba Hutchinson and Stephen Eustáquio were the pairing in the first 2 games of the Cup. Eustáquio was injured for the 3rd game, as we mentioned, and the pair was different in game 3. That was Mark Anthony Kaye and Jonathan Osorio, who will meet as an attacking midfielder. They paired up in game 3. After the Cup, Eustáquio and Kone became the central pairing, and Jonathan Osorio joined them in cases where there were 3 central defenders, such as in the 3-5-2 formation that they used about half the time. In the Gold Cup, Osorio remained in the position and was joined by Ahmed and Bombito. Of course, Eustáquio and Kone not part of the Cup. So Also, Liam Fraser, to a lesser extent, was part of the central midfield. And the ubiquitous Laria also popped up here in this position. He replaced Eustachio once after the Gold Cup. Okay, so Kone and Eustachio, the main players there. Let's go to the left midfielders. Well, we've kind of talked about the midfield. So these players who are coded as midfield were either moved or else really didn't participate that much. We do have a candidate in Matthew Chouanier, who is a possible candidate, and he's coded as a left midfield. Chouanier has just 2 caps for Canada since 2013, so it's just kind of an up-and-comer. Maybe we'll hear his name more in the future. On the right side of the midfield, we have David Wotherspoon as a possible but unlikely candidate. And he actually was part of both tournaments, a sub in the World Cup and in the 2023 Gold Cup. But he, over the past year, was subbed in for 2 games, on the bench for 4, and not selected for 6 matches, including the last 4. So kind of drifting off the team is David Wotherspoon. And in terms of the position of right and left midfielders, well, with Canada using so many different formations, we did feel a need to kind of talk about these specifically. Ali Ahmed was coded as a left midfielder, but we kind of treated him as a central midfielder for the discussion. So let's move on then to attacking midfielders. And we begin on the left side. And here we're going to put Alphonso Davies, who is a very versatile player, but for Canada is more of an attacker. He's a left back for Bayern Munich, a left back / winger, but for Canada, more of an attacker, and actually starts in various places. So Alphonso Davies is a definite candidate. We have actually Junior Hoylett kind of coded in this position, and he usually does play more in this position. But in the period we're talking about, the last year, he has moved to a forward position. So we're going to talk about him there. And Liam Miller, who is coded as a forward, has been in this position more. In fact, in one game in the Gold Cup, these two switched positions. But honestly, it's usually Hoylett as the attacking midfielder and Liam Miller coded as a forward. Anyway, Liam Miller is a likely candidate here. And we have Jacob Schaffelberg as a possible candidate, and Jayden Nelson as possible but unlikely. And then a player who is off the squad, we'll just mention him by name, Luca Koleosho. Actually, I will talk about him because Canada is hoping to kind of get him, but he hasn't quite committed. Hasn't quite committed to his to his nation. He was born in the USA. He's eligible for Italy and seems to be favouring Italy. And he plays for Burnley in England. So it doesn't look like he's going to come for Canada. He actually was selected for the preliminary squad for the Gold Cup, but I think that was in hopes that he would join, but he didn't take the bait. So Luca Koleosho still up in the air, but we'd have to say he's not part of the team at this point. So let's look at the candidates in more detail. Alphonso Davies, of course, probably the biggest name Canada has ever had, now that he plays for Bayern Munich and in the Champions League and is successful at that level. He is still only 24 years old and has 46 caps and 15 goals. for the national team. So he first played for Canada when he was 17. So he moved to Bayern Munich in 2019 from Vancouver Whitecaps in Canada there, and has not actually been part of every squad. He was injured for the Gold Cup in 2021, of course, a starter in the World Cup in 2022, and one of the A team not electing, it seems, to come to the Gold Cup. I think CONCACAF has too many tournaments, and so especially the bigger countries, Mexico and USA, are regularly sending B teams to the Gold Cup. Anyway, Alphonse Davies started 7 of their 12 games over the period, and not select, or the 4 Gold Cup match he missed. Otherwise, he was subbed into one match. So anyway, definitely a starter for Canada if he's available. Liam Miller is 24 years old and has been with Canada since 2018, and he has 24 caps and 1 goal, and he plays for Basel, or is on the roster of Basel in Switzerland since 2021, but actually is currently on loan to Preston in England. And he was on the roster, or he was on Liverpool's team. He didn't play any games for them, I don't think. Anyway, Liam Miller coded as a forward, even though we're dealing with him as a left attacker here, which you'll understand soon. So he was selected for the World Cup in 2022 and was one of the players who also joined the Gold Cup in 2023, starting all 4 games there. And those were the only games that he started, actually. He was otherwise subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1. That was the last match, and not selected for the first 4 matches. So that adds up to him looking like a likely candidate here. And let's move on to Jacob Schaffelberg, who has been with Canada since 2020, but only 8 caps and 2 goals there. He was not part of the World Cup squad, but was on the 2023 Gold Cup squad. He was subbed in for 4 matches, on the bench for 1, and not selected for 3 matches. He didn't start any. After the Gold Cup, he was not selected for the next 3 games, but he did pop up in the last match and appeared as a substitute. So because he was involved in the last match, we have to consider Schaffelberg a possible candidate here. And finally, we have Jayden Nelson, who is possible but unlikely. And he was not selected for 8 matches over the period, including the last 4 matches after the Gold Cup. So he was in the Gold Cup, but has not been seen since. So Jayden Nelson plays for Rosenborg in Norway and has 5 caps and 2 goals for the national team. But given his participation over the recent period, we consider him possible but unlikely. Okay, let's talk about the position of left attacker. So usually for Canada, it's a left wing position. If you think about the 3-5-2 formation that they've been favoring, that would be a kind of a winger. And Davies is the player playing in the position. So we said the left back doesn't really move up. It's covered by a more attacking player, and Davies is that player. On one occasion, he switched wings with Buchanan, which they also do during games too. So it's not a surprise to see he and Buchanan switching wings. Anyway, Alphonso Davies remained there after the Cup, almost always as a winger. Liam Miller played the same role in 3 of the cup games, but as we said, one time he switched positions with the forward Hoylett. Jonathan David also played in this position as left attacker one time. Jonathan David, usually a forward, though. Okay, let's move over to the right side and the right attacking position. So again, it could be a winger or an attacking midfielder on the right, or even a forward in a 4-3-3 formation. But as we said, the candidate's usually a winger. I was actually surprised to see Richie Larea there so much, because he seems to be everywhere else at the same time. So I think there are 2 of him. But he is a very versatile player, plays on the left and right in attack or defense. But he is coded as a right winger, and actually in this period did play mostly as a right winger. Richard Larea is 29 years old and has 48 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2019. He has returned to Toronto FC to play under manager John Herdman there. That's his third stint with them. He returned in 2024. Prior to that, he was with Nottingham Forest in England, so another good club affiliation for Canada. But he didn't really get any game time for Nottingham Forest. In fact, he was loaned to Vancouver and to Toronto during that period. So he is actually a very influential player for Canada. He was part of the World Cup in 2022 as a starter, and also the Gold Cup in 2023. So we were very happy to have him. So over the last year, Larea has started 10 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1, and was injured for the last match. And we were worried about that injury. Because even into May, he was still listed as being injured. That injury was a hamstring injury that he picked up in early March. And for a while, it was an unknown return date. However, he did return to the bench for his club on the last match of the season, suggesting that he has recovered from the injury, and also the injury tag on my main source has been removed. So thank goodness, because we were worried about losing Richie Larea for this tournament. Okay, the other player over here is Tajon Buchanan. I think I forgot to introduce them, so I should have done that in the first place. Both Richie Larea and Tajon Buchanan are definite candidates here. And we also have Ryan Raposo as a player seemingly off the squad, but we'll just put that name there but not talk about it. So I've introduced Richard Larea. So let's look at Tajon Buchanan. He's 25 years old and has been with Canada since 2021 with 36 caps and 4 goals. And he plays for Inter Milan in Italy since 2024, a big move there. But he was with Club Brugge in Belgium from 2021 to 2024. So really moving up in his career quickly. He was a starter in the World Cup in 2022, but didn't participate in the Gold Cup in 2023. And I won't really go through his numbers because he missed the Gold Cup. Suffice to say that he is definitely a starter when available for Canada. He did sub into 2 games over the period, so not necessarily starting all games, but nevertheless an important player for Canada. So let's go back and look at this position of the right wing or right attacker. It usually is a right wing for Canada, and Larea actually is the main player in the position, and to a lesser extent Buchanan, but Buchanan plays a bit further upfield, sometimes playing as a forward. We saw that Larea did participate in the Gold Cup, so he remained in that position. Although Jonathan Osorio also played the winger role once. When it was a right attacking midfielder or a right forward, Buchanan was in the position, although Laria was usually on the field in a different position. There. Okay. So two definite candidates for that position. We move on to the central attacker, and we have Jonathan Osorio, whose name we've mentioned a few times. He's 32 years old, or at least he will be by the time the Cup comes around, and he is a veteran for Canada since 2013 with 72 caps and 9 goals. So he's been with Toronto FC in Canada for the last 10 years. So part of many tournaments, and also a player selected for the World Cup, and actually was just a sub in that cup, who also played in the Gold Cup in 2023. So not completely a B team there for Canada in the 2023 Gold Cup. Actually, it seemed the older players wanted to play with it, perhaps feeling that their time for participating in tournaments was running out. I'm thinking of Victoria and Hoylett and Jonathan Osorio with that. Anyway, so given that he played in the Gold Cup and was a starter, he started 8 of their 12 games over the since the start of 2023, and he subbed in for 3 and was not selected for one other. But that was the last match, so that moved him down a notch. Probably not that relevant though, because now the new manager has come in and will make his own decisions. So central attacking midfielder, he's the only one in the position, but they do use the position. It was only used twice, and Osorio filled it once and Jonathan David filled it once. So we saw more Osorio in the kind of central midfield role during this period. That was partly because they used the 3-5-2 formation. Okay, let's go on to forwards, and we have a definite candidate in Jonathan David, and another definite candidate in Kyle Larin, and a likely candidate in Junior Hoylett, not usually a forward, but he was during this period, and a likely candidate in Jason Russell-Rowe, a possible candidate in Lucas Cavallini, and a possible candidate in Ike Ugbo. And we have 2 more, Charles Andreas Brim and Theo Baer. So 4 possible candidates in all. And then one who seems to be off the squad, Io Akinolo. Several here. Theo Corbino, so we'll just mention them by name without going into detail. Daniel Jebison and DeAndre Kerr, and finally Sean Ria. Some of those names I'm not even familiar with. They don't have any caps for the teams. But Theo Corbino and Io Akinola probably a little better known. Anyway, we won't deal with them unless they come more back into the squad, and we can look at them in part 2 if need be. Let's look at the candidates we do have. We have Jonathan David, so he's 24 years old and has been with the team since 2018 with 47 caps and a stunning 26 goals. So a real scorer or something Canada has struggled to find over the years, someone who can put the ball in the net. Jonathan David is with Lille in France since 2020 and has been with teams in Belgium before that. Was a starter in the 2022 World Cup, but not declined the 2023 Gold Cup. And started, let me check, I got to calculate because I didn't write down how many games he started. I think it was 8 of the 12 games, so just the four Gold Cup games that he didn't start in. That also rings true because we have him as a definite candidate. So Jonathan David. Next is Kyle Larin, 29 years old. And since 2014, he has 66 caps and 29 goals for Canada. So also a very good scoring record for him. And he plays for Mallorca in Spain and also played in Belgium, just like Jonathan David, with Club Brugge, so the same team that Buchanan played for there. And in fact, they were on the team at the same time. Kyle Larin also played in Besiktas in Turkey for 4 years. He was a part of many tournaments. I won't go into detail, but sub in the World Cup in 2022 in game one, but then gained a starting position for the next two games. And he was not part of the Gold Cup squad there. So he also started 8 of the 12 games and just the 4 Gold Cup matches that he was not involved with. Liam Miller is coded as a forward, but we moved him to the left wing, and basically from the left wing we moved Junior Hoylett, who has been playing as a forward in this period. So Junior Hoylett, one of the veterans on Canada, kind of one of the old guard players. He's 34 years old now, and has been with the team since 2015 with 63 caps and 14 goals. He's playing for Aberdeen in Scotland now, and he was with Reading in England and Cardiff, my boyhood team there. I grew up in Cardiff, and we were delighted that he was with them from 2016 to 2021. So again, another player who's been through all the major tournaments for Canada, and one of the players who was both in the World Cup squad as a starter and in the Gold Cup squad as a starter too. However, those were his only starts in 2023, Junior Hoylett, those 4 Gold Cup starts. So becoming a bit of a kind of a backseat player here. He did sub into 5 games over the period and was not selected for 3 matches, including the last match. So again, that would be a bit more worrying had the manager not changed since. So we have Junior Hoylett as a likely candidate. Also likely Jason Russell-Rowe. He has only 5 caps for Canada, the 21-year-old, and he plays for Columbus Crew in the USA. And he was a substitute in the 2023 Gold Cup. That was the year he got his first cap. So not of consideration for the World Cup squad there. In fact, his first cap was in the Gold Cup. But he has been active since. He was subbed in for 5 games over this period, on the bench for 2, and just 1 match that he wasn't selected for. So some of those Gold Cup players really haven't survived on the team afterwards, but Jason Russell-Rowe is one that has, and we have him as a likely candidate here. Lucas Cavallini is just a possible candidate here, despite his experience. So since 2012, he's been with Canada with 41 caps and 18 goals. He plays for Puebla in Mexico since 2024, but actually has played in Mexico quite a bit. It's his second stint with Puebla, and he was also with Penarol in Uruguay. So an interesting career for Lucas Cavallini. And has been part of many tournaments over since the 2017 Gold Cup. Another player actually that was a substitute in the World Cup, but a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup. So played both tournaments. And over the last year, he started 3 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1, on the bench for 1, and not selected for 6 others, including the last 4 matches. So even reading that, I'm a bit surprised. And there must be a mistake there because he did start all 4 games in the Gold Cup. So I'm thinking he started 4 games. But yes, we'll see that he doesn't get starts ahead of the starting forwards now. So Lucas Cavallini. Now, normally we would say someone who missed the last 4 matches would be possible but unlikely. But given his experience with Canada, we don't think in his case that he would be an unlikely candidate. Next, I guess the second of the 4 possible candidates is Ike Ugbo, and he has just 9 caps for the national team. He plays for Troyes in France, but was actually loaned to Sheffield Wednesday in England since 2024 and to Cardiff, just like Junior Hoylett. So we were also happy to see Ike Ugbo playing for Cardiff. He was actually with Chelsea in England from 2017 to 21. I don't think he played any games for them, but he was loaned out quite a bit. And Ugbo was born in England. So he was off the team for a while, part of the World Cup squad on the bench, not part of the Gold Cup squad because he was kind of off the team for 15 months, but he returned in March 2024 and started the last of their games. So Ike Ugbo we have as a possible candidate. Charles Andreas Bryn has 12 caps and 1 goal for Canada since 2022, also with a very respectable European team, Sparta Rotterdam, since 2022, but was not selected for the World Cup or even for the Gold Cup before that, but did play in the 2023 Gold Cup as a substitute. So no starts for him in 2023, but he was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 2 matches. Not selected for the last 3, though. We have Brim as a possible candidate here. And finally, Theo Bair. Theo Bair has 2 caps and 1 goal for the national team and plays for Motherwell in Scotland. He returned after a 4-year absence to the national team and appeared on the bench in their last game in March 2024. So Theo Bair also with an outside chance here. So we've looked at a lot of candidates here. Let's summarize the situation of forward. And it is almost always a 2-man forward line for Canada, though only a single forward in the World Cup. So in game 1, it was Jonathan David. In game 3, it was Kyle Larin. And in game 2, it was both of them. That was the pairing going forward. Almost always both of those two. Tajon Buchanan stepped in for David one time. As we saw in the Gold Cup, both of them were gone, and it was Cavallini and Hoylett playing in the forward role. And we did see Liam Miller and Hoylett switching positions one time. After the Gold Cup, Larin and David resumed their spots. They were joined by Buchanan once and Ugbo once, with Jonathan David moving back to a central attacking midfield role. Okay, that is the end of our look at the candidates, and so we move on to section 3, where we offer any closing thoughts. So, not too much to say. We were a bit surprised with what seemed a sudden exit by Herdman. I'm sure from the outside perspective, say of people less familiar with Canada, they'll be shocked he was gone because he was so popular when he was here. But those more in the know see that there were kind of cracks in the team, maybe some disagreements on the team, and disagreements with Herdman and the Canadian FA there. Anyway, so he left, and we now have Jesse March. It's quite exciting, even if he has come in quite late. They have a couple of exciting games with Netherlands and France before the tournament, so it'll be great to see them. So, still excited about Canada. Talent beyond what Canada has had at any point in the past. So, still a lot of hope going forward because this talent is very young. Let's race through the team again and nominate players who we think are going to be starters. Players we're confident are going to be starters. And actually, at the goalkeeping position, I feel like it's kind of up in the air. Milan Borjan really is the starter and probably will be, but it seems like Dane St. Clair, particularly, maybe Maxime Crepeau, but Dane St. Clair is kind of moving into becoming a starter as Milan Borjan ages out. So I'm not really confident to say that Borjan is going to be the starter there. Let's move on to central defence. Definitely Kamal Miller will be a starter. Stephen Victoria is usually beside him, but actually has only started about half the games and is aging himself. So I wonder if they will start bringing in other candidates like Derek Cornelius or Bombito, or even Scott Kennedy, who seemed to be kind of next in line but has dropped off the team a bit since. So Kamal Miller, the only one I'm willing to highlight there. But in a sense, Alistair Johnson, who often plays as the third central defender when they have that formation, he's a definite candidate either in that central defence or as a right back. So Alistair Johnson, a definite candidate. On the sorry, did we do the left side? On the left back position, there's really no candidate. It could be Richard Laria, but no one really playing in the position consistently enough. And in the 3-5-2 formation, there often is no left back. Okay, Stephen Eustachio in the midfield. He has become captain, it seems, over Milan Borjan, and he is a staple if he's available. Sometimes he's injured, as he was in the third game of the World Cup, but we'll put him as a definite starter. Ismail Kone has become his partner over the last year, so we're confident enough to say that Ismail Kone will be a starter. At the more attacking end of the field, Alphonso Davies as the left attacker. That position has been a left winger over the last year, with them using a 3-5-2 formation about half the time. Alphonso Davies does move around the field, but definitely is a starter regardless of where he starts. No one other there. Richard Larea, well, we never really know where he's going to start. Very versatile player, coded as a right winger and is one, but also plays other positions. We think he's a starter. Tejan Buchanan actually hasn't started that much. Started less than half the games over the last year, and yet he sees. He definitely seems a starter. How can Canada not have an Inter Milan player being used as a starter? Central attacking, where did our Jonathan Osorio go? I think I forgot to put him on the list here. But central attacking, they don't use the position enough for us to nominate a candidate here. Jonathan Osorio should be on the list. I'll put him here, but not convinced that he's going to be a starter in this cup. So he's a likely candidate to make the squad, but I'm not going to nominate him as a starter. Up front, though, it's been very consistently Jonathan David and Kyle Larin playing most of this period as a pairing, so two forwards up at the front. And that's probably why they have two forwards up at the front, so both of them can be on the field. So we do nominate them as starters. Let's finish with a review of injuries. And blessedly for Canada, that is not going to be a long section here, because they have no injury concerns. For a while, Richard Laria looked like he was going to be a concern, but that seemed to have cleared up. And so we don't have anything to report here. Okay, let's finish up then by previewing part 2. So when the final rosters come out, we'll go through this list again and show which ones made the final squad, which ones didn't. Any notable non-selections that surprise us, we'll emphasize, and then any surprise inclusion, including newer players, we'll also talk about. And finally, we will update any injuries. So hopefully no one will get injured between now and then. Okay, well, we hope this raises your appreciation when Canada steps on the field and you know the players a little bit better, and we will see you back for part 2. We would like to thank Paul Udin and Pixabay for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast. The piece is called Victory Epic Music.